Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back for the episode 2 of Twin Peaks Season 2. Said I'd get it done and up by the end of the day, so I'll stay true to my word. And this is another excellent episode, chock full of all sorts of new information, interesting reveals, and some pretty cool stuff all around. So let's get started. I didn't give the title of the last episode, the season opener, by mistake. The title of season 2, episode 1 is May the Giant Be With You. So, like, May the Force Be With You or something, I don't know. This one is entitled Coma. That is the official title of season 2, episode 2. So let's rock and roll. So we start off the episode with an exterior shot of the Great Northern and beautiful Snoqualmie Falls. And inside, we've got Dale giving Albert a bit of a history lesson on a particular time in Buddhist history, while a barbershop quartet warms up in the background while enjoying their cigarettes. I mean, yeah, sure, why not? It's Twin Peaks. Fits perfectly. There'll be other weird situations like that. It'll pop up later on, too. Yeah, apparently Ronette has indeed awoken from her coma. And they're going to show her the composite sketches of Leo and Bob and see if she recognizes them. Albert shows that he is capable of being humorous, at least, when he mentions the contents of Jacques Renault's stomach and talking about the whale from Pinocchio. So at least he's not complete doom and gloom all the time. Or I should say, at least sarcasm and apathy. Gives us the rundown on basically what happened when Leland killed Jacques in the hospital. Yeah, so was questioning the old guy, aka Senor Drool Cup, who Albert says, shall we say, has a mind that wanders. So yeah, definitely more of Albert's dry humor. It's always enjoyable. But the real reason, I guess, in addition to being put on the task for finding out who shot Dale, is Albert's also there to let Dale know that his former partner, that being Dale's former partner, Wyndham Earle, not only has been put away in a mental home for some reason or another, but has actually escaped from said mental asylum. His former partner, Coop's former partner, flew the coop, so to speak, and is out there on the loose. Not important information at the present time, but you can imagine that mention of an ex-partner that went nuts and that was locked in an insane asylum and then escaped the insane asylum. Yeah, that's just not oh, by the way, kind of what's going on back home. We will get to that at some point in time. So yeah, but don't focus on it too much right now. It's in the background, let's say. We see the gentleman that called for Josie sitting at another table, keeping an eye on Agent Cooper. So maybe there's something going on there as well. Let's see here. This is another important scene as far as moving along the Laura Palmer murder part of everything, and some of the underlying questions that we have yet to answer. Donna shows up after getting that note on the Meals on Wheels. Look into the Meals on Wheels. Who did she receive that from? That's a good question. So she shows up at the home of Mrs. Tremont, who's a elderly lady that's obviously bedridden in the little kind of trailer type home. So Donna goes in, and the young boy sitting in the chair across from her that Donna doesn't see immediately is actually David Lynch's son. And if you look at a picture of David Lynch and you look at a picture of his kid, it's pretty obvious that they're related. He even has a similar David Lynch type haircut. Yeah, when Donna uncovers the plate of food, you might think it's kind of weird that she's getting upset and asking about the creamed corn. You know, I requested no creamed corn. Do you see creamed corn on that plate? It is not her just being weird. There is something in this Twin Peaks universe that has to do with creamed corn, as strange as it sounds. But you'll have to wait. I don't believe it's revealed in the 2 seasons. I do believe it's only revealed in the prequel movie. And yeah, cream corn does represent something. It's a bizarre Twin Peaks type thing. The term or the name for it is Garmonbozia, which as a made up word that I don't think anybody knows what it actually means. It's looked into it, but yeah, the cream corn you'll see what that means when you eventually get to the movie. It's kind of funny, but it has its own thing. So yeah, that what the cream corn part was selected on purpose. So yeah, you'll have to wait, unfortunately. When Donna looks down the second time, we see that the cream corn is no longer on the plate, and it is over in the young boy's hands, and Miss Tremont thus mentions that her grandson is studying magic. And we do know that magic and the supernatural and whatnot are all elements of the Twin Peaks universe that we've seen so far. So that obviously is a bit odd to see that jumping from her plate to his hands and then disappearing again. So yeah, definitely weird, something weird going on here. When Donna asks Mrs. Tremont if she knew Laura or knew her well or whatever, look at the expressions on the faces of her and her son. They're very telling. She says no, but I mean they obviously have some knowledge of her and more than just the girl that came and delivered the food every day. Mrs. Tremont mentions that Mr. Smith, the next door neighbor, knew Laura and was a friend of hers, and that she might inquire upon, him as to, or inquire about Laura Palmer to him. So yeah, so she apparently, I would say, if we go by that Mrs. Tremont must have been the one that sent the note to that said look into the Meals on Wheels. I can assume that's the only way, because obviously Mr. Smith had known about her beforehand. He would have probably just sent the note saying, his address or whatever, or something like that. Or maybe he did send it, and it just happened that she went over to Mrs. Tremont, or Don went to Mrs. Tremont's first. So we don't know yet, but we'll find out. When Mrs. Tremont mentions Harold Smith, or Mr. Smith, his name's Harold Smith. Her grandson says a phrase in French, at roughly "chez un homme solitaire." The significance of him saying this won't be made clear until later. It is significant that he said this. He is mentioning it specifically in reference to Mr. Smith, even though he's speaking French. So yeah, that phrase becomes important, and it reveals some things later on. So apparently Mr. Smith is an agoraphobic, so he doesn't leave his home ever. So yeah, if you got a weird vibe from these two and that whole scene, then your instincts are dead on. There is something definitely odd going on there. So Donna leaves a note for Mr. Smith after knocking on his door a couple times, and apparently somebody got the note because someone looked out the blinds and real briefly. So we'll see what that leads to. So now we're back at Calhoun Memorial Hospital. I thought it was Twin Peaks Memorial Hospital, but insignificant details there, actually. So yeah, they're back there. Dale and Harry are visiting Ronette with bringing the sketches, and after they figure out how to get the seats height adjusted, they show her the pictures. She has trouble kind of focusing in on them, so it takes a little bit. Leo's photo doesn't, or not photo, but sketch doesn't really do anything. Doesn't cause much of a reaction. She probably recognizes him, but is obviously he's not to her the one that hurt her specifically. But once the picture of Bob comes into, or the sketch of Bob comes into focus, she reacts very violently. She then starts kind of thrashing about on her bed and was repeating the word train over and over. Dale asks her if she's in the train, about the train, and she nods for a moment. So she's confirming that she's connecting that person with the incident in the train car. So she's making that connection. So that's something that Ronette identified. The Giant said that we would, they'd talk to someone now, ready to talk, that had seen him in his body or whatever. So maybe that's the person. Maybe she was the one. We'll have to see. So yeah, we're in the Great Northern office of Benjamin Horne, and Jerry's sitting there eating his smoked cheese pig. These guys that love food. You could have seen in the I think it was the previous. I don't know I can't remember if it's this or the previous episode that this talking about this like goat's head stuff with rocks and all this weird stuff and glazed and all this some great delicacy gross thing. But when you see Jerry, I told you in the episode that he appeared, that he was in the movie Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He plays Sully, the character that gets his comeuppance. But he's also in another film, in a film from earlier on, a cult classic, by the way, The Warriors. If you remember that scene where the guy's leaning his hand, I think he's got his bunch of fingers and a bunch of beer bottles, and he's clinging them together outside while he's leaning out his head out kind of outside the car door. He says, "Warriors, come out and play." That's him. So yeah, if you're familiar with the movie The Warriors and that guy, yeah, it's the same actor. So yeah, he's been in a few different films that have gotten a reputation. So Ben and Jerry have 2 ledgers, and yet cannot decide which to keep, which one has more merit than the other. So instead they decide to roast marshmallows. So yeah, they definitely are foodies. They enjoy, a lot of their enjoyment comes around from eating food. So now we're at the Double R, and apparently Andy is not the most adept at using Scotch tape. He's putting up wanted posters for Bob. I guess their confirmation from Ronette has them putting those up all over town. In case you didn't know, the log lady does not introduce the log. When Major Briggs says that no, they have not been introduced. She delivers the message to Major Briggs, which is deliver the message, and apparently Major Briggs knows exactly what she means. So in a way, Briggs kind of functions on a similar wavelength to the log lady where the supernatural is concerned. I mean, he doesn't have like a kind of psychic medium type or object that he interacts with, but he's kind of one of these other unique people within the Twin Peaks universe that does have kind of his one foot into the world of the bizarre and the unknown and the supernatural, and one in the real world, kind of like she does. He's just kind of just a different type of character. He doesn't have these weird quirks like the log and all that. We see Andy coming up with some comedic gold when he's talking about being a sperm donor. Apparently it's his civic duty, and he likes whales. So I don't know what that means. He thought sperm whales. I don't know. But he had a routine physical, and sure, I thought it meant I didn't have to take a bath. But the doctors told me the truth. They told me I can't have babies when they said he was sterile. Oh, Andy. Oh, you poor guy. So apparently he and Lucy were indeed doing the nasty, but he couldn't have gotten her pregnant, apparently, because he is sterile. No, it doesn't mean he's immune from body odor. Uh-oh. What's Lucy been up to? Definitely some soap opera stuff going on there. We go back to Sheriff Truman's office, and he's got the little Truman quote on the sign underneath the hunting trophy. So his own little sense of humor there. Hank acts like a jerk, and nobody is amused by it. Hank and Harry grew up together, boyhood friends, I guess, childhood friends. And Hank actually used to be one of the Bookhouse Boys, part of that that secret society that Hawk and Ed and and James and Joey Paulson and all these other guys are part of. So at one point he wasn't a criminal scumbag. He was actually one of the good guys. So what went wrong? We'll never know. Let's see here. All right, so we're back at Ben Horne's office. And he's calling Harry to let them know that Audrey has been missing for the past 2 days. So there's a little bit of urgency on Cooper's face. Then Jerry Horne comes into the office. I don't know what the hell he's wearing. God, I don't know if that was fashionable at the time back then, but yeah, he looks ridiculous. Not only with that outfit, but those flip sunglasses. Yeah, see that guy, you would, and walking down the street, you'd probably bust a gut laughing. Alright, so he brings in Catherine's insurance policy, but it is unsigned, which may or may not be a good thing, given the situation with the mill and her mysterious disappearance. We'll have to see. Ben suggests that Jerry get a hold of Einar Thorson, who was the Icelandic dude that was the head of the group that were over there to invest in and put money down for the Ghostwood development. So they figure might as well call over there and do a little damage control. And as they're about to call, Leland comes in and basically suggests that exact same thing. Thinks it's a coincidence, but unfortunately, Leland did not let his two friends, or actually employer, know that he'd already called Einar and given him a heads up on the fire. So he thought he was doing them a favor by getting that done, but apparently Einar was not too happy about it, and neither are the brothers Horne. So we go from that little comedic moment over to something that actually is quite a huge revelation and very important, which obviously they do a great transition from with the soundtrack and the focus of Leland's expression and everything. So they draw it in from the comedic into that more serious moment. Do it very well. So Leland happens to spot the police sketch of Bob sitting over on one of the desks, or the side tables, and he's obviously visibly upset. And Leland says, and he says this out loud, that he knows Bob, and that he knows him, and with absolute certainty in his voice. And that's a big reveal right there. He mentions his grandfather's summer house at Pearl Lakes. Apparently this guy we know as Bob in the sketch lived right next door. He remembers him from when he was just a kid, apparently. So yeah, there's no uncertainty there. He knows this guy. I mean, the minute he saw the dude's face, yeah, he was just like, holy crap, I know this guy. Yeah, that's a huge revelation, because Bob was just this entity or person, whatever you want to call him, that had appeared in Dale's dream, and very vividly, and also it appeared to Sarah Palmer. She was able to give the sketch that were able to identify him with, and now Leland recognizes him. So maybe Leland is the one that the giant was referring to as, the one that has actually seen him in the flesh, and it wasn't Ronette that had seen him. I don't know. It's interesting, folks. This definitely puts a completely different twist on things just out of the blue. That short little scene there. It's good stuff. Over at Calhoun Memorial Hospital, Leo's in a coma, possibly brain dead. So, I mean, the moral of the story is karma exists in Twin Peaks, and Leo got what is coming to him. Lucy receives an anonymous phone call for Sheriff Truman, but given she's such a stickler for protocol, won't put it through because the caller will not reveal their identity. Not sure who that is. Could be anybody. Over at One-Eyed Jacks, we see our pal Emery Battis. Apparently has some weird fetishes. He likes to get tied up. He likes to have his toenails painted, or he likes the sound of a vacuum running, and he likes ice. So I'm not even going to try to take a stab at that from a psychoanalytical point of view. No, thank you. So Audrey decides that I guess it's as good a time as any to interrogate old Emery, probably from what happened with her and her father, and the little encounter she had with Blackie. She probably realizes that it's getting time to get some information, get the heck out of there before things get worse. Emery basically confirms all that we already know. Apparently Laura was there, was too wild, she was doing drugs, and was kicked out after one visit. And, it's pretty much, confirmed that Laura knew that her father owned the place, and that she probably did sleep with him. So, nothing new there, really. Just a kind of a funny scene to see what a weirdo Emery is. Shelley and Bobby are discussing the Leo situation, and for some reason Bobby thinks they'll be rich because of the insurance payout, for an insurance policy Leo maybe has because he's a trucker and he's part of a union. I'm not sure. Dale's back at his room at the Great Northern, mentions Wyndham Earle's disappearance and Audrey's disappearance briefly before Major Briggs comes in. And this is when things start getting really interesting. And, I mean, we had the thing with Leo, or I'm sorry, not Leo, but Leland, and is recognizing the police sketch of Bob. But this part is even crazier, and it's actually really cool, and it opens up a whole world of possibilities going forward. So long story short, Major Briggs works for a special branch of the military that deals with the monitoring of deep space and deep space communications, galaxies beyond ours. So, any kind of radio frequencies or any kind of, stuff that can be picked up on any kind of equipment. And, I think is it SETI, I think, is the, it's like this kind of independent, non-profit type of thing that, not non-profit, but thing that people have been doing for a while, where they set up their computers as part of this thing to, try and monitor or to receive transmissions from, extraterrestrial intelligence or life. So it's kind of a hobby that some people have been doing for a long time. So I guess it's similar to that. I think it's called SETI, SETI, something for extraterrestrial intelligence, or search for extraterrestrial intelligence. You can Google it if you're interested in that thing. That's just kind of what it reminded me of. And basically he shows that they were able to capture part of the conversation that the Giant had with Dale at his from episode 1 of this season, from the specific part where the Giant says the owls are not what they seem, shows up in print on the printout. So just as that, and then it mentions Cooper multiple times as well. And so yeah, this is quite a revelation, because it shows that not only was Dale's his kind of supernatural experience with the Giant, with this entity that appeared before him, was confirmed in clues that we found in the episode, but also actually the whatever radio signal, any kind of signal, or whatever you want to call electronic signals, or whatever these machines capture, were able actually to capture this conversation that was taking place between this entity and Dale. So opens up a lot of possibilities. It's pretty cool. The source and location of the transmission will become clear further down the road. So we're not done with this part of it yet. It's still pretty cool. So it's just it's going to weave its way into the post Laura Palmer part of the series. But we'll get to it. So don't worry about it. We'll get there eventually. For those, especially those that are interested in more of that kind of, I don't know if you call it like an X-Files type thing or whatever, but that sort of thing. Yeah, so we've got that kind of a lot to absorb and think about, and then we go into what I will say, unless I correct myself further down in another review, this is like the cringiest moment in the entire series for me, is when James sitting there singing that song, And his voice, I sincerely hope for the actor's sake that that isn't his voice and that they just did they just dubbed someone else over it. Oh, that voice is so lit. Oh, it's just horrific. It's like nails on a chalkboard. And maybe it's just me, but oh, I can't. I always skip past that part of it. I just can't listen to it. It's just total douche chills down the spine. Apparently Donna's starting to get a bit of jealousy, feeling of jealousy from James looking at Maddie a little bit too much, making eyes with her maybe, and she storms off. Then gets then a phone call from the mysterious Harold Smith that we were waiting for at some point. Is now on the phone, and this pulls Don and James apart from their makeout session. And as Maddie is waiting for them to return, we come across numero tres when it comes to the big kind of crazy revelations or events that take place in this episode, and that is when none other than the mysterious stranger Bob appears within the house. They're at Donna's house, walks kind of from across the back of the screen, turns and comes forward and starts heading right at Maddie as she's just kind of staring in disbelief, climbs over, kind of creeps and climbs over the sofa and just right up like into her face. And she's, freaks out and screams, and they come running to find out what's wrong. Obviously, he would have been in the room with her and they would have seen him. So what exactly just happened there? I mean, she wasn't sleeping. She was, maybe she was daydreaming or something, but for some reason, Bob decided to make his presence known to her for one reason or another. So yeah, 3 things that happened. Leland recognizing Bob, Major Briggs's revelation about the message that was intercepted that revealed that they were able to actually track the conversation or bits of it from what happened, the conversation between Dale and the Giant, and then Maddie seeing Bob, at least in some way or another. Those 3 things are pretty huge. It almost dwarfs what happened. I would say it does dwarf what happened in anything that happened in episode 1. At the end, or towards the very end, tail end of the episode, we transition back to Ron at the hospital, where we're doing kind of not a montage, well, kind of a montage, kind of a superimposing of different scenes and things that have happened that are kind of taking place while Dale's asleep. We see Ronette back at the hospital. We see sort of an out-of-focus image of Bob superimposed over her as she's kind of thrashing about in her bed. We see an image of Dale while the Giant's voiceover plays, saying the owls are not what they seem, or the owls are not what they appear. We see Dale asleep in his bed to reaffirm that he's dreaming. We see the reaction again, which is his reaction to Major Briggs saying the Giant's line of reading it off the paper. Then we see that first image of Bob that we saw for the very first time at the beginning of, earlier at the beginning of the season of season 1, that Sarah saw, that where he's kind of crouched down at the end of the bed, but they superimpose an image of an owl over his face. And so now we've got this Bob character who we haven't really been able to pinpoint yet, and now we've got this notion of the owls are not what they seem superimposed over him. So yeah, that's that's another doozy for you. We see that staircase shot that I mentioned that was going to come up again and again. Sarah's running down the stairs in kind of slow motion. Her voice is all distorted. I think she might be saying Laura, but I can't confirm that. And then we see an image of Bob kind of walking towards the camera. And remember, it's Dale's dream, so it's almost like Bob's walking towards Dale, and he's got this really sadistic smile on his face. And the phone call happens. Dale is woken from this dream that he's had, and it's Audrey on the other end, in tears and distraught. And she's wondering why he hasn't come and got her, because she left a message, or not a message, left a note for him that he hasn't read yet. But she does say, she mentions seeing him in his tuxedo. So that is some information that is helpful to Dale, or will be, because right before she's able to relay any other information, the phone is cut off by Blackie, because apparently Emery went and tattled after Audrey got done interrogating him. So it looks like Audrey is in it deep. And Blackie, remember her, she's a heroin addict, or most likely Ben or Jerry got her hooked on heroin, and now her daughter is in her clutches. So Audrey got a bit off more than she can chew, let's say. We'll see what happens to her. But yeah, that's the end of season 2, episode 2. That's, I mean, from here on out, all these episodes are just gonna, I mean, because like I said, they're just chock full of just great stuff. But we got some seriously good moments to tide us over until episode 3. Got a lot to think about, and I will be back with episode 3 as soon as I can. Scout's honor, and I'll talk to you then when I get it all done. Take it easy, folks.